My brother moved into my house without asking and then tried to evict me. I came home from a 2-week work trip to find all the locks changed and my belongings in the garage. He had a sheriff's deputy at the door saying I was trespassing on his property. I thought it was a nightmare, but the reality was so much worse. I, 32F, bought my house 3 years ago. It's a modest 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy, but it's mine. I saved for years, worked 2 jobs, and finally achieved the dream of homeownership. My brother, Jake, 29M, has always been, let's say, financially creative. He's bounced between jobs, burned through inheritance money our grandparents left us, and has this weird entitlement complex where he thinks the world owes him something. 2 weeks ago, I left for a work conference across the country. I'm a project manager for a tech company, and this was a huge deal, potential promotion territory. I was gone for 14 days exactly. I texted Jake once during the trip because Mom asked me to check on him. He'd just been evicted from his apartment for not paying rent. He said he was figuring things out and had a plan. I should have known. I landed at 6 p.m. on a Friday. Exhausted, jet-lagged, ready to collapse in my own bed. I pulled into my driveway and immediately noticed something was off. There was a different doormat. My cute, welcome mat with sunflowers was gone, replaced with some generic brown thing. Weird, but okay. Maybe it blew away? I put my key in the lock. It didn't work. I tried again. Nothing. The key wouldn't even slide in all the way. My heart started pounding. I checked. Yes, this was definitely my house. Same address, same chipped paint on the shutters I'd been meaning to fix, same dent in the garage door from when I misjudged the clearance. I knocked. Heavy footsteps. The door opened. Jake stood there in MY doorway, wearing MY bathrobe, holding a cup of coffee from MY favorite mug. "Can I help you?" he said, like he didn't recognize me. "Jake, what the hell? Why doesn't my key work?" "Your key?" He smirked. "This is my house. You need to leave before I call the police." I literally laughed. It was so absurd. "Jake, stop playing. I've been traveling for 2 weeks, and I'm exhausted. Let me in." "I'm not playing. You're trespassing. Leave now." He started to close the door. I pushed against it. "This is my house. I have the deed. What are you doing?" "No, I have the deed. And if you don't leave, I'm calling the cops." "Call them. Please call them." So he did. He pulled out his phone right there and called 911, saying there was someone trying to break into his home. I stood there in complete shock. This had to be some kind of psychotic break. There was no other explanation. 20 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy arrived. Jake came out with a folder of documents. He showed the deputy what appeared to be a deed, a utility bill in his name, and even a driver's license showing my address as his address. The deputy looked at me sympathetically. "Ma'am, do you have proof this is your residence?" "Yes. My driver's license, my mortgage papers, they're all inside." He changed the locks. "Do you have anything on you? Any mail, any documents?" I fumbled through my purse. I had my license, but it showed my address. I had nothing else concrete on me. Everything was inside. My mortgage papers were in my filing cabinet. My recent mail was probably in there too. Jake smugly handed over more papers. "Officer, I don't know who this woman is. She seems confused. Maybe she has the wrong address. This is 4782 Maple Street, correct?" I was nearly screaming. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down." "I'm calm. I took a breath. This is my house. I've owned it for 3 years. I can prove it, but all my documents are inside." The deputy looked uncomfortable. "Sir, can you tell me when you moved in?" 2 weeks ago, Jake said smoothly. "I've been here for 14 days. Peaceful possession. I have the deed, as you can see, dated 3 months ago." 3 months ago. I was living here. 3 months ago. I was here. That's impossible. I turned to the deputy. "Call the mortgage company. Call the county records office. I can give you my loan number." "Ma'am, those offices are closed. It's 7 p.m. on a Friday." "Then let me get my documents from inside." I can't allow that without his permission, and he's saying you're a stranger. This was actually happening. This was actually really happening. My brother was stealing my house, and the police couldn't help me. Jake crossed his arms, looking pleased with himself. Officer, I'd like her removed from my property. You little. I started toward him, and the deputy stepped between us. Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but you need to leave the property. You can sort this out through the courts on Monday. Where am I supposed to go? My wallet, my clothes, everything is in there. The deputy looked at Jake. Sir, if there are items belonging to her inside, she has a right to retrieve personal belongings. I don't know what she's talking about. Everything in there is mine. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tackle him. Instead, I felt tears of frustration building. My cat is in there. I have a cat. Her name is Pumpkin. She's orange. She needs her medication. Something flickered in Jake's expression. He knew about Pumpkin. There's no cat here, he said flatly. Jake, where's my cat? Where is Pumpkin? My voice cracked. I don't know any Pumpkin. Ma'am, you need to leave, or I'll press charges for harassment. The deputy put a hand on my shoulder. Ma'am, please. Come with me. In a daze, I walked to the deputy's car. He was kind at least. Told me this was a civil matter. Told me to get a lawyer first thing Monday morning. Told me he was sorry. I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot for 2 hours, crying and making phone calls. I called my mom. She didn't believe me at first. Thought I was confused. When she finally understood, she said, Jake wouldn't do that. There must be a misunderstanding. You should just talk to him calmly. Thanks for nothing, Mom. I called my best friend Melissa. She told me to come stay with her immediately and that we were going to fix this. I called my mortgage company's emergency line. They confirmed I was still the owner of record and still making payments. Auto-pay from my bank. Thank God. They said they couldn't do anything until Monday but confirmed there had been no sale or transfer of the property. I called a 24-hour locksmith and asked if they could help me get into my own house. They said not without proof of ownership and not if someone else was claiming to live there. It opened them up to legal liability. I drove to Melissa's house and collapsed. Didn't sleep all night. Just lay there, my mind racing. How did he do this? How did he forge documents? Where was my cat? What was his endgame? Saturday morning at 8 a.m., I was at the police station filing a report. The officer who took my statement was more helpful. He said this sounded like identity theft and fraud. He couldn't make Jake leave, but he could start an investigation. He asked for my documentation. I had photos on my phone, thank God. Photos of me inside the house, dated with metadata. Photos of my closing day 3 years ago. Bank statements showing my mortgage payments. I'd photographed them once for a refinance application. Emails with my address going back years. The officer took copies of everything. Said a detective would be in touch Monday. Monday couldn't come fast enough. I spent the weekend alternating between crying and plotting. Melissa helped me compile every piece of evidence I had. We created a timeline. We made copies of everything. I contacted a real estate attorney who agreed to see me first thing Monday morning. Saturday night, I drove past my house. Lights were on. I could see Jake through the window, sitting on my couch, watching my TV. I wanted to brick through the window. Instead, I took photos. Documentation. Sunday, I went to the county recorder's office website and looked up my property. The online record still showed me as the owner. No recent transfers. I took screenshots of everything timestamped. Monday morning, 8 a.m., I was in attorney Sarah Chen's office. I laid out everything. She listened, took notes, and then said the magic words, "This is fraud, and we're going to bury him." She filed an emergency motion for something called unlawful detainer and requested an expedited hearing. She also contacted the police department and asked to speak to the detective assigned to my case. By noon, we had a hearing scheduled for Wednesday. Sarah said the judge would likely see through this immediately, especially with all my documentation. But 2 more days. 2 more days of Jake in my house. Monday afternoon, Detective Morris called me. He wanted to see Jake's documents. Sarah, and I went to the police station. Detective Morris said they'd asked Jake to come in for questioning, and he'd agreed. Mistake number 1, Jake. Tuesday at 10 a.m., Sarah and I sat in the police station's waiting room while they interviewed Jake. He'd brought his folder. Detective Morris later told us what happened. Jake had presented the deed. It looked official, he'd done a good job. It had the county seal, official formatting, everything. Except when Detective Morris looked closely, the notary stamp was wrong. The notary listed was someone who'd been dead for 6 months. That was mistake number 2, Jake. Detective Morris asked Jake where he got the deed. Jake said from an attorney. Which attorney? Jake hemmed and hawed. Said he couldn't remember the name. Detective Morris asked for the purchase records. Where was the closing paperwork? Where was proof he'd paid for the house? Jake's story started falling apart. He said it was a private sale. He said I'd sold it to him. For how much? Jake said $50,000. For a house worth $320,000? Why so cheap? Family discount, Jake said. Detective Morris asked why I'd showed up on Friday claiming it was my house, if I'd sold it to him. Jake said I was mentally unstable and trying to scam him. Detective Morris then showed Jake MY documents. The mortgage statements. The purchase records from 3 years ago. The continuous utility bills. The tax payments. The photos. Jake got quiet. So, you're saying your sister has been paying the mortgage, taxes, and utilities on a house you own? Detective Morris asked. That's generous of her. Jake mumbled something about a misunderstanding. Let's talk about the deed, Detective Morris said. This is a forgery. The notary is deceased. That's a felony. Where did you get this made? Jake lawyered up at that point. Interview over. But it was enough. Detective Morris told me they had probable cause for arrest, but wanted to coordinate with the court hearing first. Sarah said this was good. We had criminal and civil cases working together. Wednesday, 2 p.m., we were in court. I brought everything. 3 years of mortgage statements, utility bills, tax records, insurance documents, photos, character witnesses, my closing documents from the original purchase, bank records showing all the payments came from my accounts. Jake brought his forged deed and attitude. The judge took one look at the deed and asked Jake, "Where is your title insurance policy?" Jake, "My what?" Judge, "When you purchase a home, you get title insurance. Where is yours?" Jake, "I don't have that." Judge, "Where are your closing documents?" The HUD, one settlement statement, the mortgage payoff records showing how you paid for this property. Jake, "It was a private sale." Judge, "Private sales still require proper documentation. Where is the bill of sale? How did you transfer $50,000? Check? Wire? Cash?" Jake was sweating now. It was a family thing." The judge turned to me. "Miss Patterson, do you recognize this deed?" "No, Your Honor. I've never seen it before. I've never sold my house. I've lived there continuously for 3 years. I've never missed a mortgage payment. I was out of town for 2 weeks for work, and when I returned, he'd changed the locks." "Do you have proof of ownership?" Sarah handed up our folder. It was 3 inches thick. The judge spent 10 minutes reviewing it. Then he looked at Jake with an expression that could have melted steel. "Sir, this deed is an obvious forgery. The notary stamp belongs to a deceased notary. The formatting contains errors that no legitimate county recorder would allow. You have no proof of purchase, no proof of payment, no title insurance, no closing documents. Meanwhile, Ms. Patterson has provided comprehensive proof of continuous ownership and occupancy." Jake started to speak. The judge held up his hand. "I'm not finished. You've committed fraud. You've forged legal documents. You've filed a false police report. You've unlawfully detained another person's property. And you've wasted this court's time." The judge's gavel came down. "I hereby order that Ms. Patterson is the rightful owner and is to be immediately restored to possession of her property. Sheriff's deputies will escort you to the residence to remove Mr. Patterson and his belongings. Mr. Patterson, you have 2 hours to vacate, and you are not to remove anything that does not belong to you." But Jake started. "Additionally, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. You're looking at charges of forgery, fraud, identity theft, and filing a false police report. Those are felonies. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Patterson into custody. Wait, what? Two bailiffs moved toward Jake. He bolted. Literally ran for the courtroom door. He made it about 15 feet before they tackled him. He was screaming about his rights, about how this wasn't fair, about how I'd promised to help him. I'd never promised him anything. I'd barely talked to him in months. They handcuffed him right there in the courthouse. The judge ordered him held without bail as a flight risk, since he'd just tried to flee. Detective Morris, who'd been waiting outside, came in and added the formal arrest charges. Sarah, the deputies, and I drove to my house. Jake had been given a phone call, and he'd apparently called our mother, who is now standing in my driveway, crying. "How could you do this to your brother?" she wailed at me. "How could I, Emma? He stole my house. He forged documents. He tried to have me arrested. He was just desperate. He needed a place to live. You should have helped him by letting him steal my house." "He's your brother." A deputy intervened. "Ma'am, your son committed multiple felonies. This isn't a family disagreement." We went inside. My house was trashed. There was garbage everywhere. Dishes piled in the sink. My furniture was rearranged. My bedroom. Oh God, my bedroom. He'd been sleeping in my bed. My sheets were filthy. There were beer cans on my nightstand. I found Pumpkin hiding under the guest bed, terrified. She was out of food and water. Her litter box was overflowing. I scooped her up, and she meowed pitifully. I started crying again. The deputies supervised while Jake's belongings were collected. He didn't have much, mostly garbage, some clothes, and weirdly, a bunch of my stuff he'd apparently planned to pawn. My laptop was in his duffel bag. My grandmother's jewelry box was in his car. That added theft charges. My mom kept crying and yelling at me. Finally, Melissa, who'd come for moral support, told her, "Your son is a criminal. Your daughter is a victim. Get your priorities straight or get off her property." Mom left, still crying, saying I'd torn the family apart. The deputies finished. One of them handed me new keys. They'd called a locksmith who'd changed everything while we were there. They gave me a case number and said I could file for restitution for damages. Finally, they left. My house was mine again. I spent the next week cleaning. Everything had to be deep cleaned. I had to replace my mattress. No way I was sleeping where Jake had been. I had to replace dishes, get new locks on interior doors, and basically sanitize my entire life. The financial damage was around $4,000 by the time I finished. Sarah said we'd include it in the restitution order. Update 1. The criminal charges, 1 week later. Jake was formally charged with forgery felony, identity theft felony, filing a false police report, misdemeanor, theft for my laptop and jewelry felony, fraud felony. 5 charges. 4 of them felonies. His bail was set at $50,000. Mom tried to guilt me into paying it. I refused. She got a second mortgage on her house to bail him out. He was released on house arrest at her place. The DA's office contacted me. They wanted to prosecute this aggressively. Apparently, Jake had tried this before, He'd forged checks from Mom's account 2 years ago, but she'd refused to press charges. He'd used someone else's credit card last year, but the victim settled out of court. This was a pattern. I gave them everything. They said the case was solid. Jake's attorney, court-appointed, reached out to Sarah about a plea deal. Jake would plead guilty to 2 felonies, serve 18 months, and pay restitution. Sarah asked what I thought. I said no. He tried to steal my house. He terrorized me. He let me think I was homeless. He neglected my cat. 18 months wasn't enough. We declined the plea deal. Update 2. The family implosion, 3 weeks later. My family is a disaster. Mom is furious with me. She's told everyone I'm vindictive and unforgiving. She's posted on Facebook about how I abandoned Jake in his time of need. Several relatives have called to tell me I'm being cruel. I've had to go no contact with most of them. The ones who actually listen to the facts have been supportive, but most just hear sister got brother arrested and decide I'm the villain. My dad, divorced from mom, called and said, "About damn time someone held Jake accountable." Dad, and I have gotten closer through this. Jake violated his house arrest 2 weeks in. He was at a bar. Back to jail. Mom blamed me for that too, somehow. Meanwhile, the detective investigation uncovered more. Jake had been planning this for months. He'd hired someone on Craigslist to create the forged deed, $500. He'd stolen my mail to get information. He'd made a fake email account pretending to be me and contacted the utility companies to transfer service. He'd even filed a fraudulent change of address with the post office to redirect my mail. That's a federal crime. The postal inspectors got involved. More charges. Jake was now looking at potential federal charges on top of state charges. His attorney came back. New plea offer. For felonies, 3 years. Full restitution. Jake would have to publicly admit what he did and apologize. I thought about it. 3 years felt like justice. But I wanted that apology. We accepted, conditionally. He had to allocate in court, meaning stand up and explain exactly what he did and why it was wrong. Update 3. The apology that wasn't, 6 weeks later. Court day. The plea hearing. I was there with Sarah and Melissa. Mom was there with Jake. She still wouldn't look at me. Jake stood up to allocate. This is what he said. I'm pleading guilty because my attorney says it's my best option. I did forge documents to take possession of my sister's house. I did this because I was desperate and had nowhere to go. I made mistakes in how I handled it, and I shouldn't have involved the police. I'm sorry for any inconvenience I caused. Any inconvenience. My attorney immediately objected. Your Honor, that is not an apology. That's a justification. The judge agreed. Mr. Patterson, I'm not accepting this plea. You've shown no genuine remorse. You called felony fraud and inconvenience. We're going to trial. Jake's face went white. His attorney tried to walk it back, but the judge was done. You had a generous plea offer, and you couldn't even muster a sincere apology to your sister, whose life you turned upside down. See you at trial. And just like that, we're going to trial. Sarah is thrilled. She says we're going to destroy him on the stand. The DA is thrilled, said this will be a slam dunk. Jake is panicking. Mom is still blaming me. Trial is set for 3 months from now. Update 4, Justice. Final update, 4 months later. The trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution laid out everything. The timeline of my ownership, the forged documents with the deceased notary, the Craigslist messages where Jake hired the forger, the fraudulent change of address, the stolen mail, my laptop and jewelry, and his possession, text messages between Jake and his friend where he literally said, "I'm going to take her house, and there's nothing she can do about it." Yeah, he'd texted that to multiple people, including one who came forward as a witness. Jake took the stand in his own defense. His attorney advised against it, but Jake insisted. It was a bloodbath. Prosecutor, why did you change the locks on your sister's house? Jake, it was my house. Prosecutor, you knew it wasn't your house. You forged a deed. Jake, I mean, it should have been partly mine. Family property. Prosecutor, your sister bought the house with her own money. You contributed nothing. Correct. Jake, she makes more money than me. It's not fair. Prosecutor, so you decided to steal her house because you felt entitled to it. Jake, I wouldn't call it stealing. Prosecutor, what would you call forging ownership documents and illegally possessing someone else's property? Jake, look, she wasn't even using it. She was gone for 2 weeks. Prosecutor, she was on a work trip. Did you think she'd abandon the house? Jake, she could have let me stay there. Prosecutor, did you ask? Jake, no. Prosecutor, why not? Jake, because she would have said no. Prosecutor, so you knew what you were doing was against her wishes? Jake, I guess. Prosecutor, you guess? Mr. Patterson, you called the police on your own sister and tried to have her arrested for trespassing on her own property. Did you think that was appropriate? Jake, I was just trying to protect my position. Prosecutor, Your position in a house you didn't own, using forged documents? Jake, when you put it that way. Prosecutor, is there another way to put it? His attorney looked like he wanted to die. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was 2 weeks later. The judge was harsh. Mr. Patterson, you committed a calculated, premeditated fraud against your own family member. You showed no remorse. Even when given the opportunity for a reduced sentence, you couldn't muster genuine contrition. You've demonstrated that you believe you're entitled to other people's property simply because you want it. This court does not take these crimes lightly. The sentence: 5 years in state prison, $47,000 in restitution, my damages, court costs, and attorney fees, 3 years supervised probation after release, permanent criminal record. 5 years. He'll serve probably 3 to 4 with good behavior. Mom started screaming in the courtroom about how I'd destroyed her son. She was escorted out. She sent me a text later saying I was dead to her. Fine. I'll be dead to her in my house that I own. The federal charges for mail fraud are still pending, but the prosecutor said they'd likely be served concurrent with his state sentence. Jake was led away in handcuffs. He looked at me once, not with anger or sadness, just entitlement. Like he still couldn't believe this was happening to him. Life is mostly back to normal now. Pumpkin has recovered from her trauma, with the help of extra treats. My house is clean, secure, and mine. I got a promotion at work, the conference I went to paid off. I've blocked most of my family. The ones who still speak to me have apologized for not believing me initially. Dad and I have dinner every week now. Sarah and I are working on the restitution. Jake has no money, so we're putting liens on any future earnings. I'll probably never see most of it, but it's the principle. The weirdest part? I got a call from the guy Jake hired on Craigslist to forge the deed. He said he thought it was for a prank and felt terrible. He testified against Jake and gave me $500 as an apology. I didn't expect that. I changed all my passwords, set up credit monitoring, and installed a security system. No one is ever pulling this again. And honestly, I sleep better now. Not just because Jake is gone, but because I stood up for myself. I didn't let him get away with it. I didn't let family pressure make me back down. My house is mine. My life is mine. And Jake has 5 years to think about how he tried to take both. Thanks for all the support, Reddit. You kept me sane during the worst of this. Oh, and if anyone wants to know, Pumpkin is currently asleep on my lap on my couch in my house. Life is good.